So welcome back. We have gone over how we made this panel in the first portion of this video. And in the second portion of this video, we are going to make this oval fan inlay. There is the panel that we are going to make. And yesterday, in the prior part of this video, we made the panel, the field. Now we're going to make the fan. This is a very traditional federal design element, and it's really clever because it is only made from two woods. It's made from holly, and it is made from, in our particular case, a black dyed red gum, but black dyed. You could also use walnut, of course, if you wanted, although walnut on that probably wouldn't work as well, but you can use something. Just need to be plain grained and lots of contrast. So the clever thing about this is that if we take a piece of holly, I have a piece of holly here. How can I not have a piece of holly? Excuse me. Here's a piece of holly. So it's got a pleasant ivory color, very uniform grain. It's very nice wood to work with. And of course, it does not have dark edges. But sand shading is a technique where you heat sand up to about 800 degrees, and then you dip your piece of holly into the hot sand, and you get shading. And if you do it consistently, you can get, so what I did was I sand shaded these two edges, and we are going to use that to make each of these triangles. But let's do a little geometry first. So here is my oval. And you say, well, gee, that's really cute. How did you get that? I use a free program on the internet called Block Layer. So it's BLOCKLAYER.com. And they have tools to let you design different shaped objects. And I think it's for schools. So it will draw ellipses, which is what this shape is technically called. And in the particular case, you can use Block Layer to set the exact size of the oval. So in this case, this oval is 113 millimeters side to side, and it's 75 millimeters top to bottom. So I stuck this to a piece of MDF, and I then used a sander to sand to profile. So it's really close to bang on, but I know it's not bang on because that's just not the way life is. So I have the letter T for the top, and it's important to label your template, because I'm not only going to use this template to draw the oval for making the fan, but I'm also going to use this to lay out the hole, which we are going to use to inset the fan into. So it's important to know what the orientation is. So I have used a square to take my two axis lines, wrap them around the edge. See them there? There's one on each corner. Well, if it had corners, they'd be on the corner. They're on the axes. So I can there's my oval. So one might think that if you set these at a constant angle, that's how you do it. Tried that. Doesn't work. really ugly. You use dividers, and you step off if you step off the number of segments that you want. That's what these patterns are. These are consistent distances around the outside. So you, of course, wouldn't have. So I decided, because I like to be complicated, that I'm going to have 10 elements on, or 9 rather, on each side. So the easiest would have been to have 8, 4 in each quadrant, but then you'll end up with a seam in the middle. And I would prefer there not be a seam in the middle, so I added a 9th element. And you can have as many as you want. You could have 17 all the way around, but then you'd have to cut all of them individually. Anyway, so I wanted to have 9, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4. So, okay, so that's a bit big. So I'll go back. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a bit small. Anyways, you get the idea. You fiddle around with your dividers until you get 9 pieces. And then your picture looks just like this. So I stepped off my 9 pieces, and then I drew a line through each dot, and I extended it long in both directions. And why, says you? Well, let me show you. So if you are making a circular fan, which to me, a circular fan or a semicircular fan only works if you've got a circular or semicircular table. But if you do that, all of your segments are the same. And so you might want to make a jig to make it easy to do that. But when you're doing an oval, and if you're making 100 ovals, all the same size, you would make jigs for each of the, you'd think that 1 and 9 might be the same, and they are, but they're not, because you have sand shaded an edge. So 4 and 6 are not necessarily, anyways, yeah, because you've got to have the same, you got to have the sand shading on the right edge. I've been making 9 of them. I'll have to think about that a little. Okay, so I want to make piece number 1. So there's my center. I'm going to, there is, it's not your imagination, this is shiny. This is a piece of packing tape, because if I stick this blue tape to the paper, it tears it up. But if I stick it to the packing tape, it doesn't. Okay. So I line it up so I'm right on the line. There it is. So I always like to put my ruler, I'll turn the picture around so you can see it. I always put my ruler over the piece I want to keep, because if I make a mistake with my knife and I wander off when the good part's underneath, I'm safe. But if I do it the other way around and my knife comes off the line, then I have a scratch right across my piece, which is not great. So don't do it. So it doesn't work 100% of the time, but it works most of the time. So let's talk about a few details here. You label your pieces, because they all kind of look the same. And just a good idea. So what I did and it's just occurred to me I could actually use the outs. I have alignment marks on each of my pieces so that I can, when I cut piece number 2, I can line it up with piece number 1. But it's just occurred to me I could use the outside edge. I don't even have to have another. So there's piece number 1. And then I take the other half. So because I'm making an oval, when I did this the first time, I made 2 1s, then 2 2s, and I went all the way around from 1 to 9. But for demonstration purposes, we're not going to do that. I'm going to make a 2 here. Tape it on, piece number 2. Line it up. Take your time, because we're never in a hurry when we're cutting veneer. Never. Okay. That unfortunately is scrap. Oh, you do cut up your template rather nicely, so that's why I brought the packing tape along, is you can apply several layers of packing tape to this before it gets unwieldy. Okay, so there's my alignment mark between 1 and 2. And I can tape them together, or I can not tape them together and just leave them in a stack on the side, like I did here. So here's a complete set. Okay. So if you cut your complete set before you stick them together, you can do this. So I line up 5 with 4. Come on, Dave. Oh, that is 6. It looked like a 9 there for a second. Okay, so we're almost done here. So I assemble my fans in halves. And why do I do that? Well, the reason I do that is because in the end, I need these two to line up perfectly. So, the way I do that is I stick the 9th piece on oversized and I cut it. So it's bang on. And then I take my other one and I do the same. And funnily enough, when you put it together, it lines up. So there we have the center element of our fan. And I am now lining this up here. Because I was so cute and I chose to have 9 elements on each side, I do not have a center divider, because what I want to do is I want to get my ellipse and place it on here. But I need okay, so because I need to draw that, this is the magic tool for making those scallops. This is a number 7 and this is a number 5. They're both 25 millimeter chisels. And we are going to use, the beauty of this is I can use this to cut the curve on here, like this. And I can use it to cut a piece here that fits perfectly. Come on. There. Fits perfectly into that oval because it was cut with the same tool. So we've just placed our perfectly matched cut little piece of black in piece number 5. I want to show you, I'm going to do a few more and then show you how we clean that up. So we're going to go all the way around. I saw probably on Instagram, but I don't remember exactly where, a really nice fan that somebody made that so this is the one that I make, and I use my template oval. There it is. You remember I used the template oval to lay out the oval. Well, I'm going to put this back over here once I put all the black pieces on and use it to trim the oval. I saw a very nice one that had a rim 2 or 3 millimeters wide. So they couldn't use that technique to make the black pieces. So what they must have done was that once they had cut this shape, they just dropped it on here and traced around it with a knife. So that's pretty slick. So you might want to consider that as an alternative. But that's not how I'm going to make this one. Anyways, you get the idea. I go all the way around using my number 7 chisel, which has a nice curvature to it. And then I cut a series of these guys. Like this. Grain direction is really important here. If I did it this way, this is all short grain. That's actually holding up really well, considering. I would expect it to break really easily along the grain. These guys don't break that way. So you cut your black pieces this way. Okay? So you tape your black pieces on, and you make sure you've got some overlap. And you say, what are you talking about? See those two ovals? They overlap. Now they overlap outside of where they will be in the end. But I'm going to come along, after I put all those black pieces on, I would come along and trim those bits off so that that would sit flush. So that when I then came in and put this guy on here, there we go, I could come in and trim those guys off, and there we go. Okay, so that's how we made this. And then I applied veneer tape to what will be the show face. And then after it had dried, I peeled the significant amount of blue tape that is on the back. You peel all that off after you have let the veneer tape dry. Okay, so we'll set that aside. We've now got our finished oval here, and we are going to get ready to set it in here. So the good news is that I have those lines to help me out. The bad news is I don't have the vertical line. This is what you get for there we go. T at the top. Oh, yep, the T is at the top. It's marked there under the veneer tape, so you probably can't see it. Okay. So blue tape is my friend. I'm sure there were techniques for doing this before they had blue tape, but I don't know what they were. So what we're going to do now is mark where to put that oval. So I line up my straight edge along the seam of the veneer. There's my long axis. There's my short axis. T at the top. I set these lines up so that they match the lines on the tape. And then I very politely trace around, whoop, the blue tape. And you see I did come off the line there. Fortunately, I was not pressing very hard. So one of the things that you do when you're cutting veneer, come on, Dave, is on your first pass, all you're doing is scribing a little line into the veneer for the knife to run in. And then once you've established that line, you can press a little bit harder to cut through the veneer. So that is where the oval is going to go. Right? It's going to sit right there. Isn't that pretty? Anyways, we have a few things to do between here and there, but that's where it's going to go. And that we have a scribed line, which I can put my knife in, that goes either all the way through the veneer or most of the way through already. And we'll be able to use that later. So I use two different kinds of routers to remove the veneer. All we're trying to do is remove this thickness, which is 20 thousandths of an inch, which is not very darn much. And if you think about it, if I make this hole too deep, so I drop my picture or I drop my oval in and it's below the level of the surface, then I am going to have to sand this surface down, and I only have 20 thousandths of an inch to sand, so I don't want to do that. Whenever you do an inlay, if it's a sandable inlay, meaning it's not a piece of stone, you always want to have your inlay sit ever so slightly proud, and then you just sand this down to match the background rather than the other way around. If it's stone, you'd have to take a different approach. So I want to set my router so that it is the thickness of the veneer less a hair, because I want to take a little bit less off than that. So this is how you do it. You may know how to do this already, in which case you don't have to worry about it. See, oh, yeah, sorry, I normally do this with the router facing me. So this particular router, you release the, so I now have this 1/4 inch flat bottomed bit grounded out on this piece of wood. So I could, if I set this depth stop here, it will in theory not cut anything because it should be dead flush. Yep. So if I then take this piece of veneer, which is the same veneer that I made the other stuff out of, and put it in there, then the amount that sticks up should be exactly the thickness of a piece of veneer. And it probably is. But I'm a suspicious sort, and I don't want it to be exactly the right thickness. I want it this to be slightly proud. So what I do is I take the micro adjust and I turn it just a hair. And I have turned it the wrong way because I'm facing the wrong way. So let's do it again. Oh, Dave. Bottom it out. And then I want to extend it a little bit, because by extending it a little bit, extending this a little bit, that means that the router bit won't extend quite so far. So I could then turn this on and make large amounts of noise. And what I would do is I would go all the way around the outside, about 1/8 of an inch from that line, I go all the way around, and I would make sure that I'm not going all the way through my veneer. I want to just have a tiny little bit of veneer left in the hole, because if I take all the veneer out, guess what? You know, it's the same thickness as the veneer. So I would go all the way around, and then I would remove that. So here we have, I have removed all of the center, and you can see how special the marks are. And I have also, using this knife, I've traced around these edges, and I have this is a hand router, and I have it set to the depth of the hole, right? So I can use this tool to chip up this piece here, which you see I've already scribed around this, and I've cut pretty much all the way through the veneer, and I can use my hand router to very precisely encourage, right? So that all came off in one piece. But I can encourage this to come off, and then I can use my chisel, now that it's mostly encouraged, so one thing I will say when you're doing an inlay like this is that if you have even the slightest little bit of stuff in the hole at the end, your inlay is not going to sit properly. It does not take very much. So you want to be very careful when you go around the edge to make sure that there's no bits of debris in here that are stopping it. But I'm pretty confident that that's looking pretty good. So where's my T gone? Okay, so there it is. So I would use, this is what I use as my glue. It's old brown glue, which is hide glue, cut with urea. It's a translucent golden color, so it's very nice with wood, and it does not affect how shellac goes on. And shellac's the finish I always use, so that works well for me. Okay, so I would put glue in here, nice and even. I would set this in carefully so that my lines line up. And then I would put a piece of, I like to use plexiglass as my clamping material, because then I can make sure that I can see what's going on and clamp it in. If I land up with any gap around the outside, I would take some of this veneer and I would sand it. I would grate some sawdust using a 220 sandpaper, and I would mix it with either this glue or with fish glue, which is a very similar hide glue, and I would put it in the little gaps, and then you can't see them. And after that has dried, it's going to look a lot like this. And so so this is the 2-day class that we are going to have at the Wooden Shop in June. So I hope you found this interesting. There are a lot of variations on these techniques that we can use, but they're all based on the same approaches. And if you're interested, I would be happy to have you in the class. And if you have any questions, you can either reach out to me or to Joshua at the Wooden Shop, and we'll try our best to answer this question. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you found this useful.
If you're interested in learning traditional woodworking, come take a class at our school in Earlysville, Virginia. You can also visit our website at woodandshop.com, where you'll find a bunch of free woodworking lessons, workshop tours, and our very popular tool buying guides. And make sure you subscribe to our free newsletter to get our latest articles and videos. Enjoy!